Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Consciousness edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at psychoactive drugs. We'll begin by looking at how psychoactive drugs work, and then we'll focus on 3 main categories of drugs: depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. We'll be sure to look at the effects of the different types of drugs within each category, including what they do in the brain. If you recall from neural communication, a neuron is a delicate, balanced mix of molecules, and anything that alters this brain chemistry can affect mood, perception, or thoughts. Psychoactive drugs can do this because they can mess with our neurotransmitters, making us release more or less than what would be natural. On top of the physiological impact of what the drug does in our brain, know that how we experience the effects of the drug can also depend on psychological, environmental, and cultural factors. Depressants, as a category of drugs, work by decreasing nervous system activity to slow things down. In moderate doses, they can make us feel less anxious and happier, but at high doses, they can slow vital life processes so much that they could be fatal. Alcohol is the most widely used depressant, and the effects typically produce a high euphoric phase, followed by a downer lethargic phase. In the brain, alcohol does 2 things. It increases GABA, the main inhibitory neurotransmitter, which helps to slow things down, but it also decreases glutamate, the main excitatory neurotransmitter, which only slows things down further. Benzodiazepines are also considered to be depressants and include drugs like Xanax, Ativan, and Valium that relieve anxiety and produce relaxation. They also work by increasing the activity of GABA, and they're extremely addictive. You don't want to just pop one of these for fun, and their effects intensify when mixed with alcohol. Finally, opioids are also considered depressants, drugs like heroin, morphine, codeine, and fentanyl. They work by binding to the same receptors that our endorphins use, so they help with pain relief, but they also make us feel incredibly pleasant and calm. These drugs are also highly addictive, and the withdrawal is traumatic. You'll be sicker than you've ever felt in your life. This is why it's best to just say no from the start. Stimulants, as a category of drug, work by increasing nervous system activity to rev things up. They increase physiological measures like blood pressure, breathing, and heart rate, and produce feelings of alertness and euphoria. One type of stimulant, amphetamines, are usually prescribed to decrease appetite, but unfortunately, they're often overused to improve energy and mood. They work by increasing the activity of dopamine, which is why continued use could produce schizophrenic-like symptoms. Ecstasy is also considered to be a stimulant that causes feelings of euphoria and energy, and it works by forcing a dump of all the serotonin in our brain. Cocaine is also a stimulant that works by increasing the activity of dopamine and norepinephrine, as is crack, a chemically converted form that leads to faster and more intense drug effects. But the world's most widely used stimulant is caffeine, found in coffee, tea, chocolate, and energy drinks. It works by stimulating adenosine neurons, which make us feel alert. And don't kid yourself, caffeine is very addictive and has unpleasant withdrawal that includes headache, irritability, and depression. Finally, there's nicotine, one of the most addictive substances found mainly in cigarettes. It works by influencing dopamine and acetylcholine in the brain, which makes us feel more alert and less stress. Finally, there are hallucinogens, and as a category, these drugs produce sensory or perceptual distortions, blurring the boundary between fantasy and reality, and they may also produce feelings of euphoria. A very powerful type of hallucinogen is LSD, where a dose the size of the head of a pin can last more than 8 hours. It works by stimulating our dopamine and serotonin receptors, and then we experience profound psychological and physical changes, including hallucinations. Another powerful hallucinogen is psilocybin, or magic mushrooms. It works by activating our serotonin system, and it makes us feel like we've had a mystical experience with hallucinations and pleasant or unpleasant feelings. In other words, it could be a good or a bad trip. There's also cannabis or marijuana, which you could either consider to be a hallucinogen, depressant, or stimulant, depending on the experience of the user. It works by stimulating our dopamine and endorphin systems, which could make us feel happy and relaxed or irritable and paranoid. Well, we just looked at how psychoactive drugs work before examining 3 categories of drugs. Within each category, we explored different types of drugs, including the effects of the drugs and what they do in the brain. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?